Welcome to Uncorked and Uncut, Email Marketing Friends at Home, a vodcast with a new guest each episode, and your hosts, Kath Pay and Ryan Phelan.
Hi, friends. Welcome to yet another episode of Uncorked and Uncut, the weekly discussion with email insiders about their life, their faith, their work, their childhood, and any psychological defects that they have, which is why we've invited Dela Quist to the show today. See what I did there? That was clever.
I like that.
Dela, thanks for coming. Dela is a good friend of mine, good friend of Kath's. Contrary to popular belief, I actually think Dela is a wonderful person and have always enjoyed his presence at conferences and drinks and just social events and everything. So I'm so lucky to have you here today, and I know Kath is too. So thanks for coming, and you're joining us from what I can only imagine is a living room or a bar.
Yeah.
Or a living room with a bar, which is how it should be, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a room that I rarely come into except to get drinks, right? Because during lockdown, have quite a bit of family staying around or with us, and so in the allocation of rooms, I don't get this one.
Nice. Why does it seem like everybody we've talked to, there's a room that's not owned by them? Yeah. I mean, last week Riaz was like.
I think you'll find that's only true for the women the men that you speak to.
The men
not true for the women. True. Yeah, that's
true.
Hey,
yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah.
Very nice. All right. So what is everybody? Oh, I'm sorry, Kath. Go ahead.
No, go for it. It's fine.
I was going to say, what's everybody drinking today? I am. It's 103 outside, so I am comfortably inside in the air conditioning, drinking a nice little scotch. Kath, what are you partaking of today?
I've got a passion fruit martini.
That fits. I mean,
one of those days, Yeah.
And I'm unusually, for me, drinking a Sauvignon Blanc. It's a Loire Valley one that a friend of mine imports. You won't be able to read this because it's backwards. More on that later. Right. But it's on surprisingly Chardonnay-esque. I'll say no more. I quite like it. Very buttery for a Sauvignon Blanc. Very nice. And it sort of promotes my friend. If anyone wants to ask me who he is, I'll send you the details.
Send me the details. You know me. I mean, so
he's UK only at the moment.
That's fine.
We can put a link or the name or something.
Yeah.
We'll do it in the show credits.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Dela, you're into wine. I'm into wine. Cass into passion fruit. Frou-frou.
I'm into passion fruit big time.
I know you are.
I was talking to my friend the other day, and I was telling him about how we've got a family recipe for tomato jam, which is to die for. And then I went, oh my goodness, and we've also got one for tomato and passion fruit jam. And that got me stuck on passion fruit, right? So now I have to go and make the tomato and passion fruit jam, and I just had to have the passion fruit martini. It's the Aussie in me, I can't help it.
Passion fruit jam. I want the recipe. I want to at least see what's in this thing.
Well, the tomato.
Or not the passion fruit, and tomato.
Amazing. Really, really is. It'll transform your life, I guarantee you.
Yeah. Well, I need some transformation in my life. Okay. So Dela, first question.
Mm-hmm.
You are very vocal in the industry. I don't know that anybody that doesn't know who Dela Quist is. Or as most people say, Dela. But yet you are a very private person. For example, your Facebook page, I checked. We did our crack team of investigators did some research and was shocked that the last post you made on Facebook was 4 years ago. But with the exception of a few, cutout pieces, you're a very private person about your private life. What is give us a little insight into behind the scenes of what you do in your free time. You love to cook. You and I both love to cook. Tell us a little bit about Dela that's not on stage.
Well, that's interesting because one of the strange things about being in our industry is the word privacy means different things to different people at different times, right? So Am I a private person on social media? Absolutely 100%. Business is business. And
Right.
so most of my social media activity is around business, which is why I predominantly focus on Twitter, and LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Facebook originally was one of those things, 2006, you get an email. I was one of the first people that was invited or got on after it moved out of college and certainly out of the US. And I did nothing with it because it had no meaning. And then for a very short burst of time, I think a lot of businesses started looking at Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why I sort of did a bit. But then we get to the sort of private life. Yeah, you're right. I don't live my private life online.
No. Now, I know a lot about you. Kath knows a lot about you. You know, in private settings, you're very, you talk a lot about what's going on and your daughters and your wife and life in general and all that stuff. But
yeah, why don't I do it? I think it's a family trait, but that's another story. It's too long to go in and uninteresting to go into here. But I guess it's because I'm so out there most of the time. Mm-hmm. Okay. So anyone who meets me goes, oh God, he's so outgoing. The first time I met you, I thought I'd known you forever and everything else.
Right.
That comes at a cost
mm-hmm.
as an individual or a price, right? So there's a price attached to being that person. And it's not a price that I can necessarily extend long term. And
mm-hmm.
in fact, I suspect there won't be very, very many spiritual questions around me, but one of the things that I have, and that's not a criticism, I'm glad.
There could be. We've talked about God before.
That's true. So it's my privacy. So the way I look at it is every time you meet someone and you engage with them on a one-on-one basis, I'm very uncomfortable in multiple situations. I don't feel, people find it hard to believe. I find small talk hard. Mm-hmm. I find eye contact really difficult. I say this all the time and no one believes me. They go, but you're very good at it. And I go, yes, but that's because I've just watched what everyone else does, right?
Right.
And also watch, if you look at me, I'm at my best when I'm with one or two people.
Yep.
Or on stage, right? I don't do the mingling, friendship, kind of stuff as well, or have a conversation that involves 5 or 6 or 7 different people coming in. I find those incredibly challenging from an emotional and a mental perspective, and I tend not to engage with them. So if you watch when I'm at those events, I'm with one person, I'll get one person and I'll hammer them to death, or vice versa, or whatever it is. But you'll very rarely see me comfortably in a 4, 5, 6, 7 person discussion. I find it challenging.
I'm exactly the same. As soon as you get me in that many, I'm quiet. But if it's just a one-on-one or maybe 2 other people, so three people in the conversation, absolutely, I'll have my book.
I'm also staggeringly quiet at home.
Yes.
I have 3 daughters and a wife, 3 pets, all of whom are female. I'm the only guy. I'm quiet.
Need to call your wife. I would agree. I think this is the same for a lot of us that are on stage. And this is not I don't want it to sound elitist, right? Because I think a lot of us get that rap sometimes. But I know for me, when I get done with a show or a conference and socializing all day and talking to people, what brings me peace, what helps me reset is going to a pub or to a bar or restaurant and having those small intimate conversations to recenter myself and to get back to it. And then there's other times where I'm like, I'm going to my room, I'm going to order room service and I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to be, alone and whatever. What resets for you, Dela, when because I mean, listen, there are times during the year where we go on junkets and we're on the road for 6 weeks and we're on stage every week. And depending on the conference schedule, I can remember one year, it was literally 6 weeks that we were all in different shows. What resets it for you when you've kind of been in out and doing stuff?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think so. I think coming home right? So
Mm-hmm.
when I come home, I mean this in the most loving possible way. When I come home, I'm nobody, right? That's the first thing.
Yes.
The second thing I learned from years of traveling is bring lots of gifts, and you're very popular for at least a day or two. So always come back with a bunch of gifts. So my trips always involve a ton of time in department stores and Gap and Hollister and and whatever it is, depending on where we are in the month. And coming home with gifts, that always works.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm called creative a lot, but I don't particularly consider myself that, or I didn't used to. And the reason I don't consider myself creative is because I think of creativity as like making pots or painting or something like that. But I finally began to understand that there's creative thinking, but cooking. So I think my reset is cooking. I cook a tremendous amount. And so when I travel and I get back, the first thing I do, because it's about the only time that I'll spend a whole week eating in restaurants or whatever it is, surprisingly. Great for inspiration, right?
Yes.
I probably wouldn't cook half the meals that I do today or have done in my history if I hadn't gone to a restaurant and had something and thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Let me go and try and recreate it at home.
Yeah.
And I'm going to segue into this because it's kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of perfect pitch, where someone can play a tune just from hearing it. They always can. I can make anything I eat. It's an amazing talent. I can make anything I eat like 90% of the time from eating it. Now, if it's a technique or an ingredient I've never had before, well, I can't recreate that, right? But at least I know that it's something I don't know, and I go and look it up. Yeah. A good example of that is Thai fish cakes. I couldn't work out how you made that texture, that slightly, and I'm very textural in the things I like.
Mm-hmm.
So I love things like squid and octopus and liver, and I love texture. And so that's a good example, is that I ate Thai fish cakes for ages, and I'm like, how the heck do you do that?
Yeah.
And then I found out because I looked at a recipe, there it was, and I'm like, duh, that's not even hard.
I'll be darned. I'm jealous of that. I really am. Kath?
Going back to that creative side, right? So you and I have known each other for 10 plus years. And through all of that time, there's a couple of big
February 2007 we got LinkedIn.
2007.
February was when we linked in.
Gee.
Ryan, you were November 2010.
Oh, wow. We're in November 2010. Our anniversary is coming up, Dela.
Yeah. I don't know what we're going to do about
that. A 10-year anniversary. We'll have to put it off till next year when I come over there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kath, I interrupted.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed, right, is you think differently. And we've discussed this, you come at solutions differently, where everyone tends to sort of go the mainstream and go this way. You're coming at it from a different angle. But also the other thing I wanted to, and this also taps into what you were saying beforehand about the one-on-one discussions and everything. When you talk, you observe. You observe the person, you observe their mannerisms, and you're reading into and trying to fully understand what they're saying, where they're coming from, and everything like that. I mean, you and I have had enough discussions that you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's exhausting as well, isn't it? But that also is another way of how your mind kind of, works that way.
Oh, so, feeling people's pain is a terrible gift.
Mm-hmm.
I'll agree. Or whatever. I mean, feeling people's pain, their needs, whatever it is, it's a terrible gift because it hurts to feel it. Yeah, to empathize, you have to feel it. Lots of conversations about this always. I really object to the word contrarian, despite the fact that it's used on me a lot, simply because it implies unthinking, right? Here's the position, you're the opposite, right? So it's really easy. Just say black is white, he'll say, no, it's not, and vice versa. And
but
I think
it's meaningless as well. Just being a contrarian is you're just doing it for the sake of doing it.
yeah.
And that's not you.
But
no, that's not you.
No, and it gives critics something easy to hang on to. Do you get what I mean? Oh, Dela,
It's too simplistic. Yeah, that's too
very
simplistic. Yeah.
The way I would look at it, and there's lots of things I can apply this to, which we could go into or not. I'll leave it up to you. We could look at it into things like the current COVID situation or coronavirus currently. You could look at it in my views on sending more email or unengaged people or whatever it is. Here's a typical question about how I see things differently from everyone else. Most people will look at a stat that says, I don't know, 200,000 people die in road traffic accidents in the US every year, or 50 people a year die because of at this crossroad or whatever it is, okay? And they start trying to fix that problem. I immediately go, why do so few people die a year? Oh my goodness. Let's think through every idiot on the road. A number of them are drunk. There's very non-drunk moms taking their kids to school and someone screaming in the back, and they've got a cup of McDonald's coffee over here or Dunkin' Donuts if they like coffee or whatever it is, and they're scrambling around and the dog's doing this, and then someone else is on drugs, and then there's someone breaking the law and someone speeding because they're late for work or trying to catch a plane. Why are there not more? That's my question.
Yes.
And here's the interesting thing. And that's where you start seeing things that other people don't see, because they're trying to fix a problem as if it is fixable. That's number one, or as if that challenge is defined by that question. And I go, do you know something? I think there's an instinctive thing in human beings that means that even if they are drunk or completely distracted in the car or whatever it is, I don't know if you've seen, how often do you bump into someone when you're walking down a busy street? Almost never, right? Mm-hmm. Why? How's that possible? You have two people walking together, you both got the same choices, you're both anticipating different things, and yet, bizarrely, it's very rare to bump into someone on the street. So much so that when you do, you could get punched or you'll get a filthy look or whatever it is. That's how I look at problems. So I'll look at a problem and go, no. Why don't we have more of this? And I try and see what's inherent in the population that makes people behave in a particular way. Does that make sense? And going back to the email and things that I looked at, everybody says, don't do this, send more email or batch and blast or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Most people are ignoring it. And even if they aren't, but a lot of people don't say they're ignoring it, but then the world doesn't end, right? We're not all dead. Email doesn't implode, all of that sort of stuff. And then I start looking at why. What's the thing that we're all missing by looking at the number of unsubscribes or the number of road traffic deaths? That's kind of how I look at it. And there aren't many people who do that. Those that do are different, and they have to live with what being different causes. But if we always did things that everyone says is right, nothing new would ever be invented. You can't change if everyone gets to a consensus and stays there. And so there is a space for my kind of thinking. The thing I like most is that, and we've had this conversation many times before, Ryan, about people coming to you and saying this, and you say, when I say something, then people come to you and say, how do I do something different because I don't agree with him? I have a number of people coming to me and going, oh my God, I thought I was a complete idiot. I couldn't understand it. I've got to keep doing this because the numbers tell me to do it, right? And nothing's ever happened to me.
Right.
But yet everyone's telling me I'm a moron. How do I reconcile those? So it was so refreshing to hear you say that. And it's looking at, I would say that I've only just thought of this because of a different conversation I had recently. I would say that I can see dark matter. I can see, so this from a space perspective, I can see dark matter. I can see the thing that everyone goes, there's got to be dark matter because these numbers don't make sense, right? I can see dark matter.
Right.
That's heavy.
Okay, so I would mostly agree. I would agree with you. I think that, and damn, it's on camera. I think that one of the challenges, and I've spoken about this a lot in my career, is that one of the challenges with marketers is they always look at the aggregate number.
Yeah.
To your example, they always look at the 20% of people die in car accidents, but they don't look at the depth of it. What did that 20%, what made up that 20%, right? And so it's a lack of education, it's a lack of insight, it's a lack of trying. And when you do look at that depth, then you learn more about why that is happening, right? And so I would agree with the fact that in order to be a good marketer, to be a good person, right? If anything, in the time of COVID, what I have reinforced is I'm not interested in the clickbait headline. What I'm interested in is the explanation behind it, is the reason behind it, is the detail behind it.
But Ryan, there's always detail behind every number, right?
There is, but a lot of people choose to ignore it.
Exactly. They don't question. Then they're not, marketers are not curious enough. You present something to them and that's it. They go with it. And I think that's very limiting.
Hold on. That's not necessarily true. What they do is they go with the consensus. They go with what most people are saying.
Oh, of course.
So from COVID to best practice to any kind of like, as my daughter said, she just said this to me the other day in another context, sheeple-like behavior, right? Now, sheeple, like anything else, can be used badly, and she used it in the case of that's often used by anti-vaxxers as the reason why you shouldn't listen to the vaccination message. But I would actually argue that sheeple is the fact that most people are most comfortable not questioning. And my favorite moment was a movie recently. I'll tell you what it was. It was, what's the name of that guy? The Unabomber. Did you watch that Netflix thing on the Unabomber?
No, I haven't.
It's fascinating because it's about the Unabomber, but it's also the guy who went after and eventually caught him, right? And and he went completely off grid. He lost his mind almost, left the FBI and everything else, and went and lived in a cabin in the woods eating raw fungi and killing rabbits with his bare hands and biting their heads off. He just went completely native, off grid. And do you know what it was? He'd been reading the Unabomber's manifesto, trying to get his head around it and how we were effectively, and I'm using this, sheeple. And he was sitting down in the middle of the Midwest, and you know how flat it is there. Not that I've lived there, but I know kind of
it is. It's
flat.
Very flat.
And also he was in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, and he came to a stop sign, traffic lights as we would call it. It's 3 a.m. He can see 30 miles in any direction for traffic lights coming. And he stopped and waited at the lights. And he just sat down and went, what the fuck am I doing that for? Why? Where's my brain? My brain knows there's no one here. It's flat for 50 miles around. I cannot see any light because I'm in the middle of like 50 miles of cornfields. And yet I'm stopping and waiting at a red light. That's just, it's easy. It's comfortable. We all do it. And it's actually quite challenging to constantly not be that.
Yes.
And there's a whole bunch of reasons. So that's a good reason why. And it's not being insulting to people who follow the rules. It's just saying people who follow the rules shouldn't be so abusive towards people who can't or don't.
Yes, I agree with that. But also I think in the email marketers case as well, you add that, sort of conditioning as such. You add to that the fact that they're so busy on a day-to-day basis just churning out their campaigns. They're under-resourced, under-budgeted. We've talked about all of this, right? So they literally don't have time to be questioning the norms. if something's been packaged up and delivered to them as being a best practice, well, then
and something their boss would agree to as well.
You assume that it's been tried and tested and everything,
Yeah.
but we all know that most best practices out there, they're literally just trends, or they're old, archaic best practices, or, you know, they're self-serving best practices, that kind of stuff. So
I think they're memes. I would call them memes that work, right? Now, this is controversial. Email marketing departments spend most of their time saying no to the stakeholders, right? Because they're working to a budget, right? And that budget says get X number of emails out every day or every week or whatever it is. And by the way, you ain't getting more money because we need it for something else, but I do want more money from you because I expect you to be clever. So I think we often adopt some of these as ways to push back on the organization, trying to make us achieve the impossible with zero budget. So
yeah.
I don't think it's best practice. They're memes. They're just the ones that are most acceptable. So if your CEO comes to you and says, send more email, and you go, oh, no, we won't get in the inbox and we'll be dead and we're up, he'll shut up, right? Or another one would be come to you and saying, I need more revenue and I need you to go and send a resend. I need you to do it tomorrow or come in, whatever it is. And you turn around and say, no, you can't do that because we're over mailing. I think we use them specifically and deliberately to manage our budgets.
I think we manage it based upon what we feel comfortable with in terms of what we know. So let me put it this way. When I go on stage, 90% of that audience in any given show is looking for the basics, is looking for somebody to jumpstart them into the right direction. I have there was one year where I did a whole series of conferences, and they were just in different cities. And I did it on advanced stuff. I mean, I was talking about propensity. I was talking about modeling. I was talking about data sciences. I was just going crazy, right? And my scores for those sessions were about average. And the next year they came to me and he said, hey, I think you may be too deep. And so I lightened it up and went best practice, went, hey, here's, I'm looking at the audience and I'm telling who is in the audience and they just want simple and directive and, hey, get me started because I'm new to the industry or whatever. My approval scores from those conferences went up toward the top.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think you have to read your audience. And what that taught me, a long time ago was always ask who the audience is, what kind of marketer they are, all that kind of stuff. But I think there is a marketer that just needs the direction, that just needs the jumpstart, the easy answer, the hey, this works for most people, but please test the crap out of this because it doesn't apply to everybody. And then there is a class of marketer, like if I was presenting at Forrester, I would give the data sciences piece. I would give the high thought level piece. And those are the type of people that want that push, that have gone beyond just being able to do the simplistic.
I don't disagree with you. And you've given me a neat little segue into...
That's my job, is to tee you up.
Where I was going to go with this. Hold on one second. So first of all, I'm going to do this the first way. So in effect, what you're doing is you're articulating this dilemma.
Okay.
Oh, no, you can't do that.
No. It was right the first time.
First one.
It was right the first time. Flip them around. It was fine.
Yeah.
It looks backwards on your screen, but it's...
That's right.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I did both.
Yes,
I meant
exactly.
to start that way and do it that way. Yeah. Okay.
There we go. I don't disagree with your don't be stupid. And I don't want to spend a ton of time because I've got...
No, we won't. I just left it there.
I know.
So just let's leave it there. It's just
okay.
saying, I think, when it's know your audience, I would say know your shtick, right? Know what people want you for. So can you imagine me coming up and standing and doing a best practice? Here's what you do. Be cautious. Speech on it.
That's not your brand.
No,
but that's not your brand equity.
Exactly.
That's mine.
So
that's
what
Kath's.
I accept that. And so my shtick is if I was to go down that route, it wouldn't help me. My shtick is that I have to be Marmite. Some people love me, some people hate me, right? And I at present company accepted, but you know what I'm saying. There's a lot of people who are very dismissive of the things that I say. I've just got used to it. It's what comes with the brand, and I need to suck it up.
Yeah.
So my take on it, because we've obviously all thought of it, right? You can't be in this industry and not think about it, because I come across it all the time with my clients, my my consulting clients and everything, and I put them into, and it's horrible to sort of give labels and stuff, but it works out really easily. Marketers tend to be either purist or pragmatist. So what you were saying, Dela, about, hey, listen, I know it's not best practice, but it's working for me, so I'm going to keep on doing it, type thing. That's a pragmatist all the way, right? But again, they're going with the results and the metrics and everything. So they've got all of that to support them. It's not like they're just a rebel and just going, I'm going to do it my way regardless, even if it fails. Yep. And that's what I find. I find that it's the purists that tend to be touting the best practices and tend to sort of go, oh, you can't do that. It's against best practice. Yep. And whereas the pragmatists will go, well, I understand, but I've actually got to be, driving revenue. So,
Keep talking. I'm going to try and turn on a light. Hold on a second.
I know it's getting dark. Quick, over here. Unlike you, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm blinded by the sun, baking everything out there.
Life, isn't it?
Sorry about that. We have very patchy light around here, and this won't help now. It will help in a few minutes.
Oh, there we go.
Well, so let's head off. Let's head off to Ghana, shall we? Yes.
Yes.
So tell us all about, you growing up there, the differences, how that sort of contributed to you being you.
So where do I begin? My backstory is kind of, it's surprisingly interesting in that, where do I go back? So my family, as in the Ghanaian part of me, my father's family, is actually descended from a Danish guy called Esau Christiansen Quist, who went to Ghana in 1750, had 2 kids and stayed, right? Well, he went home, came back and stayed. So that's why I have the name Quist. I'm descended from a Danish guy in 1750. So the Quist family were very Ghanaian and everything else. And my dad went to college in the UK, went to university in the mid-50s, and he met my mom there. And they met, love of dancing, got married, and he was always going back home. And so the deal with my mother is we would get brought up in Ghana, and that's what actually happened. So she went back to Ghana when she was like 6 months pregnant with me, and I was born in Ghana. My brothers and sisters were born in Ghana, and I grew up there. So anybody who grew up around when I did, even in the US or the UK, goes, oh, it was so different. We could just run around freely or whatever it is. Now, completely multiply that by 10. And that's what you got, like what running around in Ghana was like as a kid. Complete freedom. Right. Running around barefoot. I would say that it probably happened in the States, but like 30 years before that. So if you'd gone to someone brought up in the 40s or the 30s, they'd have said, yeah, we were running around the cornfields barefoot or whatever. Or,
I was. As a child on the farm, I was.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. And you have access and you were probably driving a tractor when you were like 10, lighting fires when you were 5, and playing with machinery that you would never let a kid do today. So I just
hell no.
Had that.
Oh, I was doing stuff that the government would come and say you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like that, but just add another whole level of complexity and everything.
Yeah.
Then the other thing, which may or may not be a segue into another conversation, my mom's English and white. So I was born in Africa to a white woman in a mixed race relationship. And Ghana being the first independent Black African country, sub-Saharan African country and everything else, there was a lot of positivity around being Black, and it wasn't Black power. It was like, how do we build manufacturing and everything else despite the challenges? And believe you me, you wouldn't want to be a small country in Africa in the 50s or 60s trying to deal with the US business people and European business people. If you did well, you did well, but mostly the everything was stacked in the favor of Europe. So I just grew up in that situation, and I grew up in a situation, I went to school there and everything else, where Europe was, I'll tell you something really bizarre. Age 3 or 4, I absolutely believed that Europe and America were in the sky, right? A bit like heaven. And the reason was you took off on a plane. I didn't think about boats. It was like you flew. And I'm like, oh, well, they must be in the sky. So I'm 3 years old thinking Britain and America are heaven.
Right. Well,
simply because that was the only frame of reference. Anyway,
right.
So to cut a long story short, I went to school there and everything else. And I did not experience winter until I was 19 years old and I moved to the UK.
Wow.
And, you know, I remember that childhood as being, it was good. There were challenges. Imagine being me age 9 in the class, right?
Mm-hmm.
Please. If I think that people give me a hard time now, being 9 and being told you're different and you're a bit weird and you're a geek and you think of stupid stuff and you say everything that no one else agrees with, that was just pretty brutal. But
right.
Again, it was kind of, that's me. It's my fault, right? It's not theirs. I could have complied. I could have been like everyone else, but I chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
So moving to the UK, I came to the UK for university, and I moved here when I was 18, 19.
Why the UK? Why did you pick the UK as opposed to the US? Or
I asked that question a lot because my mom was English and because I made the decision myself. So I was actually a bit of a sliding doors moment. So my brother and I got a scholarship to go to Italy for 3 months to learn to speak Italian, right? In Perugia, there are a couple of Italian universities that are cultural exchange type things where they bring people all over the world, from all over the world, to learn culture and the language. And we went there, and I was due to get my A-level grades, or, you know, SAT grades, SAT grades. And I wasn't convinced I was going to do great. I kind of knew how much I'd put in, which wasn't enough. Right. And I thought, how do I distance myself from my mom when I got the results and getting the results?
Right.
That's the first thing. And the second thing is I figured that if I didn't get the results, the chances of my mom agreeing for me to come to Europe or to university in Europe or whatever it is, I'd be at home. I'll be there. And, you know, when you're 18 or 19, moms tend to keep you that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I unilaterally changed my ticket home from Rome, Accra to Rome, London.
Wow.
And I just got off the plane, said goodbye to my brother, who went home and sort of had to explain to my mother that I wasn't on the plane. We can't remember exactly what he told her or how we did it or how the conversation went. My mom swears she knew before. I'm not so convinced. My brother's in between on that. And so, Rome to Accra was via London, and I got off at London. I got off in London and went and knocked on a friend's door and said, "Hey, I'm in London. Can I just sleep on your couch for a day or two?" And his mom thankfully said yes. And she also helped me find a school that would, as in what you would call a public school and we call a state school, just to go and resit my A-levels without having to pay. And this amazing headmaster sort of interviewed me, and he said, "Are you going to work hard and get the grade?" And I went, yeah, of course. And he said, "You know something? There's nothing in the rule book that says I have to take you. But there's nothing in the rule book that says I can't take you. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt."
Mm-hmm.
And so he accepted me. And so I got free schooling for like 6 or 7 months, resat my exams. And actually, funnily enough, I was the only person that year in the school, because it was not a great state school, that actually went to university.
Right.
So I repaid him. So I got his stats up.
Yes.
And I went in, and then I went to university. And which quick segue into email marketing. How did I get into email? Basically, I came out of university, couldn't think what the heck to do. And I didn't apply for jobs properly, because if you want to be an accountant or a CPA or a lawyer or whatever it is, you have to do loads of interviews. Or even getting into an ad agency, you have to get interviews before. So I just went for whatever was going, and it was media sales, which was selling advertising to marketing people in tech.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did until I then went to Excite and ended up in email. So there's a really, really short how I got into email.
Yeah.
For me, short.
Yeah. So last question, because we've, like all of these that we do, we get to the end and we're like, where did that go?
I know.
Quick.
Last question. You're an entrepreneur. You've owned a number of companies. I have been very impressed with the companies you've started and the business that you've done. How does that stay alive today? Right? What's that spirit like? What's that, when you see opportunities, how are you meeting that? I mean, what's it mean for you to be an entrepreneur?
I always find that a difficult question, simply because I still don't particularly consider myself to be an entrepreneur, right? And what I mean by that is I think entrepreneurs, the good ones, are really focused on making money, right?
Mm-hmm.
More than anything else. I think that's what drives entrepreneurs. And I'm interested in too many other useless things that don't make money. Does that make sense? That are interesting to be a great entrepreneur. And it's probably why I'm not lying on a beach somewhere. If I had that lust for money, I think I would have been better.
But I don't think that fits in this industry, right? Kath and I have talked about this a lot, is that I can't, if I had my hourly rate against all the time that I've given to marketers to help lift the boat and to help people out, I would be on that beach with you, kind of a thing.
No, because there's only 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah,
for
there
that
is.
kind of stuff. I'm talking about building businesses, entrepreneurial things. Now, here's the thing. Can I build a company? Yes. Right? There's a difference between being able to build a company that has certain values, do you get what I mean, and does certain things, and I consider that to be different from being an entrepreneur. And believe it or not, sadly, and I don't, it's an odd paradox in me, but there's lots of them. On the one hand, I fight against structure and the sorts of things that you need to run a business. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I'm actually reasonably good at it. Okay. And I'm especially good at it if I don't have certain responsibilities, like operational responsibilities and all of that kind of stuff, which is what the entrepreneurs never let go of, right? And that's the difference. So I think I enjoy that. If I made a lot of money and my mind wasn't used once, I think I'd prefer it less than making a lot less money and my mind was used all the time. And I think that's why I'm a weak entrepreneur. And I'm not being insulting to entrepreneurs when I say that. There's a ruthless focus towards making money, in the same way as if you watch The Last Dance, right? You can't fault Michael Jordan's wanting to win. It supersedes everything else, right? And that's the same thing with money, because money is the ultimate currency. If you're saying, I'm better at you because I'm a better painter, and you go, but I'm a better sculptor, that's all subjective. Who's made the most money? There's no arguing with that whatsoever. So I could be in the nuclear industry and you could be in marketing, email. If I ended up with more money than you in the entrepreneurs thing, I'm the winner. And I think that's why entrepreneurial skills are so associated with that winning mentality. And the final thing I'll say on it is that if anyone's watched the movie Chariots of Fire, right? If you watch that movie, there's a bit where the two of the guys, Lord Lindsay, comes second actually in the Olympics, and Harold Abrahams, who comes first. and he's slagged off for being a professional and all that. Lindsay would put a glass of champagne on every hurdle so that at the end of every hurdle he missed, he'd drink the champagne. And he had fun doing it. And he'd rather be a glorious second, right, than an ugly first. Michael Jordan would never say that, and nor would most entrepreneurs. And I am too invested in the glorious second to be an ugly first.
See, my definition of entrepreneur, I think entrepreneurs come in more than just that one flavor.
Yes.
I think there are also visionary entrepreneurs. And what drives them is their vision, right? If it makes money, then absolutely fantastic. But they're compelled to do this because they can see something and they want to make it happen. They have to achieve that goal. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs follow down that route. Now for you, I don't necessarily think that you're quite like that, but I've seen the visionary in action in you. And that's what very much taps into the entrepreneur kind of style as such. It's that visionary leader. It's okay, this is it. And part of that is, he's gone.
He's gone. Where did he go?
I know. We haven't even finished it.
Let's talk about him behind his back.
Okay. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So don't be stupid, Kath. Okay. No. We'll wait for him to rejoin. For those of you playing at home, take a potty break. Put us on pause. Maybe go do that.
We are going to be wrapping up soon, though, aren't we?
We are. We're about done because,
but
people
we
have lives to do.
Yeah, indeed.
We have lives. People have lives. They can't just stick with us all day.
Yes. But I knew this would happen. We've got like 50 million questions that we're like, okay, so what are we going to ask Dela? And we've gone through about 3 of them.
We've hit. Literally, we could do this for another hour.
Yeah, that's always the way. And can you imagine if we actually because originally because Ryan's such a brilliant chef, and Dela, as we've just heard, is also, really into cooking and everything. I'm not too shabby about it. I'm not as passionate about it as they are. But we thought cooking would be totally awesome. But then when you go and put cooking in with the 3 of us and talking, and we thought, this is not going to be a short one. So,
yeah, no, it'd be forever. Look at what we did with Skip. And he's back.
Yeah, he's back.
I'm sorry about that. I accidentally knocked out my power supply without noticing it.
Nice. Well, Dela, this will be fun for you. So while we were gone, we talked about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now at least
I've got to listen to the whole thing.
You've got to listen to the whole thing to see where you fit in. So we're out of time. We try to keep these manageable so that people don't go, my God, I've spent a lot of time with Phelan and Kath and Dela. To wrap up real short, what advice would you give a new email marketer in the space that's been on the job for less than 6 months? And it can't be, don't be stupid, because I'll reach through the screen and smack
you. I would say one of the things that are great about email marketing, and I'll probably promote this later on in the week, I've just written an article for Gretchen asked me to do it for Campaign Monitor, right, about how we address the lack of diversity in our space, right? And one of the things I said is that we're in a fantastic industry. You get true responsibility from day one. If your responsibility is to get the email out the door, that's a responsibility, and it's terrifying and it's huge and everything else. But you are given responsibility on day one. You're also trained in disciplines that are so automated now that very few people moving forward will ever have them. But it's great to know how to truly code HTML, for example, because it makes you better. The use of data is something that email people use a lot. Segmentation, targeting, all those skills are driven into you daily and monotonously, regularly, and it's a great place to start. So I would say stay in this space for 2 or 3 years, no matter what, and your career will be better than it would have been if you'd started somewhere else. So that's the first thing. Go with it. Advice-wise, I would say learn to count. And I sort of say this all the time. There's a huge difference. Percentages are for the show, right? Revenues for the dough. And I say this all the time. So if anyone says to you, we had a 35% increase in conversion rates, I'll say your conversion rates were shit to begin with. They have to be, right? Because it's not that easy. Otherwise, we'd all be billionaires. Right. So what you'd be looking at is an improvement of conversion rate of 0.1% in a business that turns over $50 million is a huge difference, but it doesn't get you on a stage to talk to people because your company won't allow you to tell revenue out in public or say revenue in public.
Yeah.
So learn to count and learn how to back your judgment with numbers rather than percentages. Does that make sense? Because I think that's what the C-suite believes in more than anything else. And the final thing is, I'm going to again be controversial. There are two types of email career. They're the lifers. I'm talking to a few of us here, right? And there's people for whom it's just a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Yes.
The difference between the two are about control, right? The lifers don't like letting go of control, so they stay in email and they'll take more and more and more responsibility on and never push back and say, we don't have enough budget to do this. Do you see what I mean? No, you can't have that. They will come in on Christmas Day or, the 4th of July and send out that email because there was a mistake in it. That's great for the lifers, but it doesn't help you get on. And that's how you identify which you are. And if you want to be a lifer, then and you love that control, email's the perfect place to be. If you don't want to be a lifer, it's the best training ground you could ever have, especially if you learn how to leverage the numbers to your benefit and present them in a way that makes everyone above you good.
I don't think that's controversial. I'd agree with that.
Okay.
No, the controversial bit is about the lifer thing, because people don't like to think of themselves in that way. They always, they don't like to think of themselves as people who don't like letting go. You can't be a lifer unless you want complete control.
Oh God, no! I disagree with that because I've been in it for life. I've been in it for life, and I've let go on many clients because.
Yes, I'll tell you what. You've been in it for life, but you've moved away from day. I'm talking about day-to-day life.
Oh, day-to-day, yeah, I can't do day-to-day.
And there
oh my God, I'm too old for that.
And I love them.
Yeah,
they're my favorite people.
Too. Yeah,
they're my favorite people because they're absolute experts
and they're reliable. Yeah,
and they're completely reliable, and they'll give everything for the company. I love them.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I've got one last question. And this one, right, we're going to use this as a hook to get people to watch all the way to the end. And Dela, it's a one word answer. Okay?
If I can.
Yeah, you can. What's your first name?
I've never been ashamed of it. It's David.
There you go.
So right. I'm David Dela Quist, but I've always been known by my second name.
There
Excellent.
We go.
So now it's out there. We got the hook. It's happening.
It's tweetable. Yes. Dela, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an extreme honor and privilege to have you on the show and to talk through some stuff. And I think I hope everybody got some like out of it. If you did like it, hit the little like button down there and subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, comments, email us at uncorkedanduncut.com. If you want to appear, if you just sitting around one day and think, God, I'd like to tell Ryan and Kath something, that's fine. We have a Facebook page. Follow us on that. Dela, where can people find you on the digital world?
Well, like Madonna, I'm easy to find online, but at Dela Quist is my Twitter handle, and LinkedIn Dela Quist. There's not many of us on LinkedIn with that name, so I'll pop up quite quickly. Don't bother on Facebook. If you want to hide something from me, post it on Facebook. And my email address has been in the public domain so long that I don't even care saying it. It's dela@alchemyworks.com. You can reach me very easily with one L.
There we go. Well, Dela, thank you so much. Kath, lovely to see you again. And tune in next week. We don't know who we'll have, but it'll be a lot of fun. We have an idea who will be, but this is what we're doing, and who knows what's going to show up. But thank you all for watching and giving us a little bit of your time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Awesome.